Humanity surrendered. When the United Nations agreed to the aliens' demands, they did so with eyes fixed on the smoldering remains of the Korean peninsula. The cratered landscape now better resembled the surface of the moon than any place on Earth. The aliens' bombardment had rendered it just as devoid of life. For millennia, us humans had dreamed up friends out among the stars, just as eager to come in peace as our own plaques made us out to be. In many the same age, the more cynical among us saw only their enemies in the darkness. Driven by greed, aliens would come to conquer this world for its wealth of minerals or oceans of liquid water. But even these weren't cynical enough. The real aliens had come to conquer the world for its people. Max was glad to be getting off the Beltway. Everyone and their grandma and the mattress tied to their car roof was heading north and west. No one was heading into the cities. D.C. had been closed off by the National Guard, and columns of black smoke were rising from downtown Baltimore. The riots had started at the Draft Center. His truck rolled up a quiet, leaf-strewn street of old townhouses. He parked in front of one painted in a 20-year-old yellow. He made a mental reminder to give the front lawn a trim one of these days after stepping through the chain-link gate. Then he stopped, laughed at himself, and headed for the front door again. There was no use in making to-do lists now. He knocked at the door, but no one answered. He didn't expect anyone to, so he didn't bother knocking twice before entering. The house was quiet except for the TV left, broadcasting the news to an empty couch.
Last week's ultimatum from the Leuchten Star aliens, which demanded 150 million healthy adults aged 18 to 30, has been met with...
Max turned it off with a flick of the remote. He continued to the screen door that led out to the back porch. There he found his grandfather.
"I was listening to that, you know,"
his grandfather said.
"Yeah, right."
Max scoffed.
"You still won't get hearing aids."
"My hearing's just fine when someone isn't barging through my house."
Max gestured to the can of beer in his grandfather's hand.
"Got any more?"
"Here."
His grandfather reached down and pulled a fresh one from the cooler by his rocking chair. Max sat down and cracked it open. The two sat drinking and watching Baltimore above the back fence. The skyline was obscured by a haze of smoke, and the sounds of twittering birds drowned out by distant sirens. News helicopters danced back and forth like flies.
"There was never this much commotion over Vietnam,"
Max's grandfather said.
"Vietnam isn't light years away,"
his grandson countered.
"Plus, there was a chance of coming back."
"None of us came back the same."
His eyes looked somewhere beyond the city skyline. Max swallowed his beer and his words. But the brooding quickly disappeared from his grandfather's face, replaced by brows raised in concern.
"How's Richie?"
"Richie's taking it as well as anyone can."
Max sighed.
"It's my mom. She can't let go of him. She holds him all day. He tries to get out from her arms and she starts sobbing."
His grandfather scrutinized him.
"And you? How are you doing?"
Max's throat suddenly felt parched.
"Well, it's a real gut punch to see your little brother drafted."
He took another swig.
"Especially after he just got into MIT.
"And College Park should be the one drafted?"
There's more use for engineers here, and Richie's a real shrimp. Barely qualifies as healthy. I'd do better up there."
"You don't even know what they want with us. Maybe they want our engineers."
"That doesn't mean they have any right to him."
"That's true,"
his grandfather grunted.
"but I hope you're not trying to prove yourself stupid."
"What does that mean?"
"You've got a better head than your father, Max. But like him, you see red when anything happens to the ones you love. I've seen it when you came home after whooping that Madison boy."
"He deserved it for picking on Richie,"
muttered Max into his can.
"That he did."
His grandfather again grunted.
"But you were stupid and did it at school and got yourself a suspension."
Max's finger twitched nervously on the armrest. It was starting to sound like his grandfather had figured out his plan.
"Maybe you're right, and Richie deserves to stay. But the draft lottery called him up, and it didn't call you. Your mother can understand that enough to sob over it. What she'll never understand, what she'll never forgive, is you trying to take his place."
Max felt his cheeks burn at his intentions being laid naked.
Why's that?
He challenged.
"Because you're not the failure you think you are. Sure, maybe you haven't applied yourself enough. Sure, maybe your grades have suffered for it. But you're still her son.
A tear welled up.
You're still my grandson. You're still Richie's brother. Don't think yourself worthless enough to sacrifice yourself."
Max finished his beer. He didn't ask for another. He didn't say anything.
"Will you stay for dinner?"
His grandfather asked hopefully.
I have to go.
The voice didn't feel like his own. His body got up by itself, shuffling toward the door. Half of his mind was screaming to listen to his grandfather and stay. The other half won. His grandfather got up and managed to stop him with a bear hug. Warmth flowed back into his body. His arms curled around his grandfather for a moment.
"Promise me this, Max. Whatever it takes, you come back alive. You hear me?"
Max couldn't look his grandfather in the eyes. If he did, he'd start crying too, and then he might never leave.
I hear you,
he said.
"Then go."
His grandfather pushed him away.
"Don't look back if you want to save Richie."
He did as his grandfather said. He got back on the Beltway and found the traffic a lot easier. His truck was the only one heading into Baltimore. With helping to close down D.C., the Maryland National Guard already had their hands full. But a spare Humvee or two, plus tear gas from the Baltimore police, had finally dispersed the rioters from the blocks around the draft center, Oriole Park. A soldier directed Max to park and then into the line. At the ticket booth into the baseball stadium, another soldier was waiting. This one was Army, not National Guard, from his updated camo.
Name?
Richard Taylor.
ID?
He pulled his brother's license out as calmly as he could and slipped it into the tray. The soldier didn't even bother with the picture. He didn't have time with the tens of thousands he had to process. He swiped it into his computer, returned it, and waved Max through. Max had sat in the stands rooting for those poor O's dozens of times. The best times had been with his grandfather, but even then he had never been down on the actual field. Yet now, under the fluorescent lights and behind a curtain that felt too translucent, he was being brusquely examined by an Army doctor who smelled the alcohol on his breath and listened to his trembling heart. Max let his toes dig into the green sod and dreamed he was Cal Ripken to calm himself down. The doctor quickly snapped Max out of his revelry with a slap on the back and a clean bill of health. Ripken played infield anyway. After Max changed back into his clothes, the soldiers ushered him into a line that flowed towards a row of folding tables in the infield. When it was his turn to step up, he realized he had just tagged first base. The clerk behind the table on the foul line handed him a piece of paper and pen.
"Your last will and testament,"
she said.
To, who?
"Write it to whoever's close to you, your family or friends. If you don't have anyone, we'll archive it anyway."
Oh, that's nice of you.
"Least we could do for you,"
she said, a little shamefaced. He penned an apology to his mother and father and grandfather. He'd never written anything so heartfelt, but then again, never did he ever have to before. He promised his truck to Richie if he did well in his first semester at MIT. His mind hit a brick wall trying to scrounge up something encouraging for Jess. No simple apology could do. He imagined her grief and fury over any clever wording he tried. She was arguing with the piece of paper, screaming at it as tears streamed down her face and ruined the ink. Max saw it, and his own selfishness, as clearly as if he himself was standing there beside her, reading such an outrageous letter. How could he be as stupid as his grandfather said? What was he doing here in Oriole Park? Why was he leaving everyone he loved? The pen started to shake in his fist, but there was no point in letting the rage boil over until he flipped the table. He had already dug his own grave by stepping through the turnstile. He settled on telling Jess the only words which really mattered, "I love you," and signed his real name at the bottom. He folded the letter into the envelope and addressed it to his parents' house in his brother's name. The clerk took it and gave him a parting smile.
Good luck,
She said to the dead man walking. Then her eyes fixed on the one waiting behind him.